5,000 people that voted in Wisconsin that don't live there. And when they don't live there, these are the things. So is that bad data? Or what it is.
Well, that's a new claim, though, Mike. In order to try...
Mike Lindell goes off in this debate about the 2020 election. Let's see what Mike Lindell has to say on the David Pakman Show.
Since the spring of 2021, I've been all about getting rid of electronic voting machines and going to paper ballots and counting. It's all about the election platforms. The 2020 election was just the eye-opener that there was problems with computers throughout our country, and that was everywhere. That wasn't I went and bought everybody's voter rolls for the 2020 election, and for example, in the state of Alabama, I went and met with that Secretary of State, and he had 4,600 and some people that voted that were over the age of 110. Now, that doesn't mean they voted for Trump or Biden. That just means there's a problem with our computers, because obviously nobody voted at that age.
Okay, so if maybe to focus this in a little more, because I think we would all agree that the rightful winner of Alabama was Donald Trump, and that had no real impact ultimately on getting to 270 electoral votes. Are there states, Mike, like, for example, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, which you believe were actually won by Donald Trump in 2020?
Oh, yeah, they all were. And when I say they all were, when you have these computers, it's like when you skim off of a casino. You can't just skim one game or even the food or a slot machine. You have to skim them all, or it'll stand out like a sore thumb. As we went into the night of 2020, got into the early morning hours of November 4th, they stopped everything. That was a deviation. I always look at deviation.
They who and stopped what? Hold on, Mike. They who and stopped what? Just so Ken can respond substantively.
The election officials in all 5 of them states stopped, including North Carolina. They stopped counting. They said, we're going to stop counting. It had never happened before in history. Stop counting. And then we've seen these deviations come down. I'll give you an example. One deviation in Michigan would be 106,000 votes came down for Biden and 3,000 for Donald Trump. And they said that was because there was the mail-in votes, when in Michigan, they were actually counted on the morning of the 3rd, not in the middle of the night on the 4th. Then you had Pennsylvania.
Well, let's just work with that, Mike. Let's just work with that.
I do want to add one more.
Okay.
And because it stands out so big. Pennsylvania ended up with more votes than voters, which has never been addressed. And it's never been addressed.
All right. Well, let's see if we can address it. Ken, Mike's made a number of specific assertions there. They stopped counting the votes. There were lops.
Before we get to it, I just wanted to point out how David Pakman asking Mike Lindell to clarify and specify right there, that is actually an example of David Pakman actually trying to specify that actually adds to the debate. Because in one of my other videos, I had a few people be like, oh, David Pakman, no, he was just trying to clarify. What's wrong with asking him to specify who's they? And it's like, there's nothing wrong in itself for asking them to specify, but there's a difference between when he's trying to be slimy and weaselly to win a debate, and he's asking them to specify they because he know they can't, because there's certain, like the Vivek one, where Vivek can't just come out and say, yeah, this is the part of the secret cabal that runs the country, because obviously that's going to get him in a lot of trouble, and Pakman knows that. And between this, where he's asking Mike Lindell for specific examples so that way the other dude could properly address it. That's the difference there. This is actually an example of Pakman asking for specifications to make the debate better. The other one is an example of him doing it to be a slimeball weasel. Just wanted to get that out there.
Numbers of votes counted. There were more votes than voters in Pennsylvania. How does a guy like you, who was paid by the Trump campaign to look for some of this stuff, how do you react to what Mike says?
Yeah, so some of the claims require context, and some of the claims require proof that I have to take a look at. But I'm going to try and do them in the order in which Mike laid them out, just so I don't lose track of them.
Yeah.
Mike identifies a problem that's a real problem, which is, I like to call it crappy data, for lack of a better word. And he called out Alabama, which, by the way, charges $37,000 for its voter data, which I find—
I know, that's what I paid for.
It's an outrageous thing that they do, and it's wrong all by itself. but at least you
Right.
can get your data from Alabama. You can't get it from Massachusetts or Indiana or New Hampshire or a bunch of other states. I like to pick on New Jersey when we talk about crappy data. New Jersey has 25,000 voters with a year of birth of 1800. 8,000 of them voted in the 2020 election, but that's not fraud. What it is lousy data. Computer systems, when they don't know what a date is, if they don't have a date, they will default in a date like 1900 or 1800. So it's important to have some context to what it really means when you have voters who are impossibly old. It often means that election workers don't have that voter's date of birth, which by itself is a big problem, because if you don't know when the voter is born, you can't determine when they die.
So that's super interesting. So on that first one, Ken, what you're saying, when Mike says this number of people over age 110 voted in Alabama, what you're saying is by virtue of knowing these systems, there's some default birth year that's put in there for people for whom they don't have a birth year. It is a problem, but it's not fraud.
In the case of New Jersey's data, where all of those voters share the year of 1800 for their year of birth, that's what explains it. If you see 1901, 1900, 1850, more often than not, those are default years of birth.
Okay.
That computers just.
Well, hold on, Mike. You laid out a few things. Let's let Len. So that's an interesting one on that, Ken. Fair.
Yeah. So, but I applaud Mike for bringing that up and talking about it, because to have really good election integrity, you can't have it if you don't have all of the necessary identifying information for your voters, and that includes having the date of birth.
Okay.
So now my question is, now knowing that, if it's just the systems defaulting to 1800, 1850, whatever. If it's just a default, why is these default years generated by the voter users? Like, not the voter users, but the people who run the voting systems? Like, they don't know the date, so they just kind of write it in themselves, so they just put 1850 or something? Or is the computer system just doing it to 1850 or 1800? And if it is, how is it coming up with these random different years? Like, why wouldn't the default, like if it's a computer doing it, why wouldn't it just default to just, oh, well, all of the ones that they don't have birthdays for, it's just 1800 or 1900 or whatever? Why is it like, oh, one's 1800, one's 1850, one's 1840 or whatever? Why do they vary like that? I think that would be my follow-up question. Why does it do that then if it's the computer systems? At least this dude's being fair. Like, at least he's not just trying to gaslight people and stuff like that. He is actually trying to explain it. Let's see if the Slimeball Weasel himself interjects and tries to ruin it for everybody.
And we could have an entire show just about crappy data, but we're going to.
I want to bring up crappy data though.
But wait, Mike, I don't want this to get so lopsided an opportunity to speak. Let's let Ken at least.
That Ken dude, he spoke. He already gave his answer. It's crappy data. Like, what else does he have to add? So now let Mike Lindell do his follow-up.
Into what this exact thing before he moves on. One of the things he said, okay, when you say data, one of the things I looked at, this is very important because this is why I'm involved with everything I'm involved in. In November and December of 2020, I spent every waking hour getting the voter rolls and stuff like he's talking about. Alabama cost me almost $40,000. But one of the things I found in the 2020 election, that people had voted in other states or in other counties they didn't live. Now, I had a hard time believing that people in Minnesota said, hey, there's 5,000 of us. Let's go jump into Wisconsin and vote for Biden. People are genuinely good people. And you had over 5,000 people that voted in Wisconsin that don't live there. And when they don't live there, these are the things. So is that bad data? Or what it is.
Well, that's a new claim, though, Mike. In order to try to keep this, I want to try to move sequentially through the claims. 5,000 from Minnesota voting in Wisconsin is a new claim. So let me go back to Ken. Ken, what about, for example, more votes than voters in Pennsylvania?
So I've heard that claim made before. I haven't seen, when you look at the actual number of votes cast, it's not bigger than the number of registered voters. I've never seen an actual official communication from a Secretary of State's office of Pennsylvania that shows that there were more votes that were cast.
I haven't either.
There are registered voters. So, we're not gonna get to the heart of that one here today. But Mike, I'd be very interested in talking to you offline on where you get that data from, so I can go.
It's not the data. It's not the data. It's a fact. You could probably even Google it on the internet. There was over 400,000 more votes than voters. They certified anyway. And as it sits right now, it's about 80-some thousand in the 2020 election, more votes than voters. Like if we walked out of a room, there's 10 of us that voted, it comes back 15-5.
That would be an astonishing fact if it was true. I don't believe it's true, but I want to look for sure, because in my work for the Trump campaign, not only did they ask my company to data mine for dead voters, to data mine for voters who were voting twice in 2 different states. We did this work for the campaign. We found hundreds of provable people who voted twice. And Mike, you used Wisconsin and Minnesota. Was that the
No, absolutely not.
No, well, hold on, Mike. Not absolutely not. You said 5,000 Minnesota voters went to Wisconsin.
You're cherry picking. No, you're cherry picking out. I'm giving you examples, David. You didn't sit here and tell me I had to come with all these sheets if you wanted. I could.
Present whatever you want.
Every single state in the 2020 election had people vote in that state that did not live in that state. That's a fact. You can check it out, every single one. Now, if you go to a county, at the county level, maybe when I've checked counties, let's say there's 100 people in the county, in my own county, that don't live there that voted. I don't believe that those people actually came in to commit a crime. I believe that their names were taken off the voter rolls. That's all done with computerized, done with computer.
Mike, you've made the claim.
So Mike Lindell is saying that he thinks that they're done with computers, that they're not, no one's going physically over there. It's just that they're just being taken and used. David Pakman not David Pakman himself, but whoever edits for David Pakman shows clearly cut some things out. I don't know if he did it for time. I don't know if he did it because it's just filibustering, but or not filibustering, but because there's no point to whatever it is he cut out. He just shortened it for time. So it seems like Mike Lindell, he's arguing for paper ballots because he thinks the computers, like people are just kind of abusing the data and abusing taking names off of people who don't even live there from other voter rolls and just using it to vote for here. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. But before you jump down my throat for it, I will say that I've said it before here on my channel, and I'll say it again. I do think there were shenanigans in the 2020 election, and it's just there's so much shady stuff going on with it. So many shady things, like so many questions left unanswered. And again, instead of trying to get to the bottom of it, the left just gaslit us and told us, no, it was not only was there no voter fraud, not only was there no shenanigans, but it was actually the most fairest election of all time. It's like, okay, really? In an election where you relax some of the rules and you change the laws, and you allow people to just drop off their votes in vote boxes and drop boxes, I should say, where you could just mail it in, your votes. The rules were relaxed a little bit. So you mean to tell me where the rules were more relaxed, that it was actually even safer and more on the level than when the rules weren't as relaxed? How does that make any sense? Common sense tells me it doesn't make any sense. How can that be? How can you have something where you relax the rules, have it be more efficient or be more secure than when it was? That would be like if I had a bank vault, right? And I had a really secure bank vault that no one could break into, right? And then, or maybe just 1 or 2 people could break into, maybe 2 people figured it out. But in general, no one could figure out how to break into this bank vault. And then I change it out for a different bank vault that is less secure, that it doesn't have as many locks on it, many bolts in it. And then when it looks like, hey, there's money missing from there, I go, hey, well, not only is there more money, but it's actually, this is the most securest vault I've ever had. It's like, well, how can that be when you've actually got a less secure vault for your money? Like, how is that possible? It doesn't make any sense. So when you immediately have the left going for the complete opposite, this hyperbolic complete opposite of what you're claiming, it's immediate red flags right there. It's immediate gaslighting. And so why would you blame anybody for thinking there are shenanigans? I think, like I said, it's crazy to think that there wasn't shenanigans of some sort. As I've said before, I don't think we'll ever truly know definitively 100% if there was shenanigans in the 2020 election. However, if I look at my magic 8-ball, all signs point to that there were. But what do you guys think about this? Do you agree with Mike Lindell, or do you agree with this other Ken guy? Do you think this Ken guy explained himself well, or do you think Mike Lindell has a point? Sound off in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this. And if you do enjoy content like this, I have a whole bunch of videos for you on the screen to click away and enjoy.